Hey! What's going on, everyone? So, we are back together this week with another video lesson. But take heart, we are going to be doing some new things this summer. So, throughout the summer, we are still going to be doing some video lessons like this. But I believe starting in July, we're going to every other Wednesday night, and I'm going to get some calendaring out to everybody, but every other Wednesday night, we're going to try to meet together here at church, hopefully if weather permits, outside, possibly in the field across the street, just for a time of connection. Maybe we'll play some water games or football or frisbee or just hanging out on a blanket, chilling and talking, maybe have some snacks and stuff like that. But, you know, as our red phase turns into yellow and turns into green, we're looking at being able to come back together in some way, shape, or form towards the middle of the summer. But through June, we are going to continue with our video lessons and our Zoom calls as well. So we want to start a new series tonight. It's only a couple weeks long. It's called Fearless Faith. And we're going to look at a couple of people in the Bible that we can really look at how they had faith in God and how it allowed them to overcome the fears that they had at the time. I don't know about you, but I definitely have fears in my life that I've had since I was a little kid all the way up until now, and I probably continue to have. There's some fears that have come and gone. There's some fears I didn't have as a kid that I now have as an adult. But there's one specific fear that's always stuck with me pretty much since I was real young. And that's the fear of heights. Man, am I afraid of heights. I can't even tell you why. It's probably because it's irrational, okay? And most of our fears are fear of snakes or spiders or closets or, enclosed spaces or water. Like, most of these fears are like irrational fears, but they keep us bottled up somehow. So, because of my fear of heights, I don't do things like roller coasters. Go to an amusement park, I'm the dude that holds everybody bags, and I'll sit on the bench, wait till everybody comes back. I don't do roller coasters whatsoever. Steve's probably laughing out there because we've gone to many amusement parks as a family, and I'm always the one that just kind of sits on the bench and holds everybody's stuff. Woo! Right? So one specific, I'll never forget this. It was a handful of years ago, we took the youth group to a place called Indian Head Camp. It was about 3 hours away. We had no cell service. It was a weekend retreat, and they had high ropes courses, which you climb up this thing and you do these different obstacles, and there was a zip lining course and all this crazy stuff. And I didn't want to do a thing the whole entire weekend because I knew I was going to be afraid. And they kept encouraging me. Jess kept encouraging me. Jeff kept encouraging me. The students kept encouraging me. The leaders at the camp were like, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. So I worked up the courage. I psyched myself up as much as possible. And I waited till a bunch of people weren't around the area because I didn't want to make it a big deal. And the head guy of the camp that was with us was like, I'm going to be your belay. Which was crazy because he was like half my size. And I was like, y'all can't hold me up there. Like, no. But he was like, I got you, Andrew, I got you. I was like, all right, cool. So I start climbing up this ropes course. I'm getting higher. I was like, oh, this is cool. And then someone said something to me, and I looked down. Right? I took my eyes off of where I was and looking kind of straight out, and I looked down, and as soon as I looked down, I was paralyzed. Y'all, I don't even know how to explain it to you. Like, I wanted to lift my hand and my leg another rung on this ladder. I physically couldn't. It was the craziest thing. I just couldn't. I remember forcing my brain to say, lift up your hand, and it just wouldn't go. I was locked. And why? Because I have this fear of heights, because I feel like I'm going to be the one person out of the million that's going to fall and fall to my untimely death and be that person that's on the news. That's going to be me. So it stops me from doing things. Right? And I've tried to overcome this fear at times, and there's times that I have in certain ways and times that I haven't in other ways. But man, this fear of heights has crippled me at times in my life. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm sure you guys have some fears in your life as well that cripple you. Maybe it's things like snakes, or enclosed rooms, or spiders, or water, or clowns, or something of that sort. It could be like feet. Maybe feet freak you out. Who knows, right? But those are all kind of physical things, right? Maybe it's other things. Maybe it's loneliness is a big fear. Maybe rejection. Maybe rejection. Did I just say that one? I did just say rejection. Woo! I'm losing it, y'all. Anyway, there's tons of fears. Maybe it's fear of failure, right? There's tons of things that we can be afraid of. But, however, we aren't on this earth, and God didn't create us to live a life of fear. He wants us to live a life fulfilled and abundant in Him. Jesus came so that you and I would live fearlessly by faith in Him, and that's what this series is kind of about. So we're gonna talk about what it means to live fearlessly in this life. And I'm not saying that means that you can never be afraid again and anything like that. I'm not saying that, but we can try to overcome those things in our life. So as we've talked about these things, the more you focus on what other people think about you, the harder it is to see what God says about you. And I think that's kind of a central point on why we let fear really control us at times, whether it's external fear, internal fear, the way people perceive us and how we think people think about us sometimes gets us stuck in our ways. And it's hard to see who we truly are in God. If we are a child of God, what He says about us in the Scripture, sometimes we forget because we're too concerned about other things. So the challenge for many of us is, what do you really want to live out fearless faith? Or how do you really want to live out fearless faith as you trust God is faithful, but it seems like you're the only one? Sometimes it can be tough to kind of be the only one doing something because maybe that feels lonely. But if we're doing the right thing and we're living for God, we can know that thing is worth doing, regardless if we're the only one doing it or not. So if you have a device or a Bible, open it up to Numbers. It's in the Old Testament. Genesis, Leviticus, Exodus, Numbers. Fourth book of the Bible. Chapter 13. We're going to look at a story of a guy named Joshua who lived out some fearless faith. So Numbers 13. So background. The nation of Israel at this time had been suffering as slaves in Egypt for about 400 years. And then God used a man named Moses, that's right, to lead them out of captivity. They were headed for a place called the Promised Land. I'm sure you guys have heard us talk about this before, which is described as a land flowing with milk and honey. The only problem is that to get into the Promised Land, they had to drive out the people already living there, which would be no easy task. God told Moses to pick 12 men to spy out the land and bring back a report. So that's kind of some background. So we're going to pick up in Numbers 13. We're going to start at verse 27. It says, "This was their report to Moses. We entered the land you sent us to explore, and it is indeed a bountiful country, a land flowing with milk and honey. Here is the kind of fruit it produces. But the people living there are powerful, and their towns are large and fortified. We even saw giants there, the descendants of the Anak." So did you catch the tone here, right? It's a beautiful piece of real estate, location, right? It's the Promised Land flowing with milk and honey. It's beautiful here. This is what God has promised us. But there's people already here that are strong and that are powerful. And we've even seen giants, right? So it's like, man, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What they were saying was, man, there's no way we can take this land. Yeah, God promised it to us, but what are we going to do here? Like, we can't do anything. We're not as big as these guys. We're not as strong. We're not as powerful. But God promised it to them. They seem to forgot the miraculous way God led them out of Egypt. The 10 plagues, the splitting of the Red Sea, walking on dry land. I mean, all of these things, wandering through the desert, but being fed with manna. All of these things God provided for them. But they seem to forget that in these moments. So this was the report the spies brought back to Moses. While 2 of the 12 challenged this report, saying, "We got this." So out of the 12 guys, there were 2 people that were like, "No, no, no, no. God promises this. We got this. If God is in it, we will be successful." So we continue on verse 31 in Numbers 13. But the other men who had explored the land with them disagreed. "We can't go up against them. They are stronger than we are." So they spread this bad report about the land among the Israelites. "The land we traveled through and explored will devour anyone who goes to live there. All the people we saw were huge. We even saw giants there, the descendants of Anak. Next to them we felt like grasshoppers." And that's what they thought too. Man, has there ever been a time you felt like a grasshopper in the land of giants? You just felt so small, like there was nothing at all possible of what you could do in a situation. And you felt like the small grasshopper in this land of giants. I'm sure we've all felt like that in moments. So we read on, Numbers chapter 14 now, starting in verse 1. "Then the whole community began weeping aloud, and they cried all night. Their voices rose in a great chorus of protest against Moses and Aaron. 'If only we had died in Egypt or even here in the wilderness,' they complained. 'Why is the Lord taking us to this country only to have us die in battle? Our wives and our little ones will be carried off as plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to return to Egypt?' Then they plotted among themselves, 'Let's choose a new leader and go back to Egypt.'" Are you kidding me? They were like, let's go back to captivity. Because they thought that was going to be better than what God had promised them. Because they couldn't see past the giants and believe in what God was going to do. They were like, no, let's go back to Egypt. What? Man, that's crazy. But how many times do we do that ourselves? Man, it's scary out there. It's scary in the future. It's scary to go and move forward. So I'm just going to go back to the life I used to live because that's comfortable, because I know what it is. No, but that's not what God has. Sin distorts our reality. We can't go back. We got to move forward into what God has for us. It's going to be tough. It may be crazy tough. It may be littered with fear. But we can always trust in God. Reading on verse 6. 2 of the men who had explored the land, Joshua son of Nun and Caleb son of Jephunneh, tore their clothing. They said to all the people of Israel, "The land we traveled through and explored is a wonderful land. And if the Lord is pleased with us, he will bring us safely into the land and give it to us. It is a rich land flowing with milk and honey. Do not rebel against the Lord. Do not be afraid of the people of the land. They are only helpless prey to us. They have no protection, but the Lord is with us. Don't be afraid of them." So what are they saying? They're saying, don't focus on the source of your fear, but on the size of your God, of your Savior. Joshua and Caleb remembered something that everyone else had forgotten. The fact that God is bigger than anything, any problem, any fear. They remembered what God did to bring them out of Egypt, while all the others had forgotten and wanted to go back to Egypt. So, what does this mean to us? You know, like we just talked about a few minutes ago, some of us may feel like grasshoppers in a land full of giants. We know God has something for us. We know he wants us to do something. Maybe we're the only believer in our friend group. And sometimes it's better to just stay quiet than to be the Jesus person. For fear of losing those friends, maybe. But what if God has you there for a reason and wants to do bigger things in and through you? There's plenty of things that God wants to use us for, that God wants to do in us and through us, and we need to put the fear aside and have the faith to follow him, not to want to go back to what was, but to move forward into what he has for us. What would happen if we began to focus more on the size of our God than on the source of our fear? Now, does that mean nothing ever will harm us? No. Does that mean nothing ever bad will happen to us? No. Does that mean we'll always succeed in everything that we do? No, because we live in a fallen world, and we are fallen people, and we still sin. What it does mean, though, is that God will always be with us, and he will use even the mistakes we make for his greater good in our life and for his glory, whatever that looks like. So what we can do now, what our encouragement and our challenge is to live bold, fearlessly, in faith for Christ and what he has for us. This is what it says in Joshua 1, 6 and 7. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Be strong and courageous for the Lord, for he is with you. And what he is asking us to do in our life, in our group of friends, in our family, where we work, in our communities, in our culture. It's crazy out there right now, guys. It's nuts. And there's lots and lots and lots of people hurting right now. It's time for us to follow God and say, what do you want from me? How can I help my community? How can I help my friend group, my family, my culture? And follow him and be strong, be bold, and take some steps to be living in faith, fearless faith, not fearful doubt. I love you guys. I can't wait to be back with you again. For Chewy, Franklin, have a good night.